Charles, I mean, we've had a mix. In some aspects, INEC has gotten the kudos. In other aspects, gotten knocks.
Absolutely. It's an extraordinary development, and it makes the whole process not only raises critical questions, but it also makes you wonder whether, I mean, anything's been learnt at all over several
Thank
years.
you very much. Next state.
Well, let's bring in our first in-studio guest, shall we? Here's Emmanuel Njoku, a member of the Connected Development Civil Society Organization. Thank you so much, Mr. Njoku, for joining us on the program. We appreciate your patience. We know you've been here for a while. Extraordinary day, like Charles describes it.
Yes, it is.
I mean, how would you describe the events of today? Yes, we're seeing 9 more results declared at the National Collation Center today. Yesterday we had the very controversial Ekiti, which is still lingering, as we've seen some walk out. But what do you make of the entire process?
Actually, before we come to you, we're having problems with your microphone, I've just been told. So let you and I can talk a little bit about this before we come over to him, whilst they're making the, okay, now I think they've got the sound fixed.
Okay, Mr. Njoku, please go ahead.
Okay, so, for me, I'm a bit worried because a lot of Nigerians approach this election, looking at the experience that they witnessed at the Ekiti and Osun election. There were doubts around the beavers. There were equally doubts around how the IREV, that's the result portal, will work. But as you are aware, I was at the election in Ekiti and as well in Osun State. There was this excitement that came with how the IREV performed in Ekiti and Osun State.
Off-cycle elections, just to be clear.
Yes, off-cycle election. I'm aware that on that election day, by 9 p.m. on the same election day in Ekiti and Osun election, over 95% of the results in that state had already dropped. They are on the IREV. So people approach this election with that expectation. And there's so much, so Nigerians have so much expectation. And there's this trust deficit that we've always seen in Nigeria, which INEC at this very time had breached that trust. A lot of Nigerians have come to believe and trust INEC. And we saw that in the voter turnout. Voter turnout in quote, because we still have not seen the total number of voter turnout, but we were in the field and we could see the number of people who came out to vote and the resilience of Nigerians staying till midnight, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock trying to vote, because they believe that that the results we are going to count and it will be made to be seen counting on the election day. And that was what the IREV was supposed to serve. But seeing INEC on election day by 10 o'clock, the IREV wasn't up yet. I can imagine that the goodwill that INEC has gathered in the build-up to this election, probably they've blown it up with what we are seeing in this.
Right, but beyond that goodwill, which is obviously a legitimate thing, I mean, you need public confidence when you're carrying out an election. But beyond that, this failure to upload the results as promised to the portal and their failure to electronically transfer the results, I mean, that clearly raises profound questions, but does that raise questions for you about transparency? Because that's a different thing than just, public confidence and whether people are happy with, or sad that it didn't quite happen. But when it raises questions about transparency, then it calls into question the motives.
So first of all, in our election day procedures and processes, the weakest link is the collation process. I mean, after elections, and which is the reason why most educated people, middle class, upper class, urban city dwellers don't usually vote. Because after the polls and the polling unit, the result that comes out at the level of collation totally changes from what people saw in the polling unit. So the essence of the transmission of results and uploading on the portal was very important to manage this weak link. That way, everybody will be carried along. But however, let me say this, because we've gone through the whole INEC guideline and the Electoral Act, and I want to say this, maybe not a very popular opinion, that in as much as INEC has failed to upload the results on the IREV, it does not in any way invalidate the collation process that is going on, and it should not in any way stop INEC from collating results, because the electoral 2023 election guideline stipulates that at the ward registration area ward collation center, that after they've done the comparison between the physical results and the one in the beavers, and they've put in the data, the results on the form EC8B, which is the collation, the registration area collation center results, that after they've done that they shall upload the result on the IREV, and it ends there. It does not further say that if it fails to be uploaded, that it will invalidate the collation processes that is ongoing. The reason for that is to carry Nigerians along, to get political parties to carry them along. You know that in most situations, party agents' business is usually transactional. We've gone to polling units where you see party agents, 10 party agents in a particular polling unit, observing, supposed to be watching over the votes of their political party. But you see the big man, in quote again, the big man in that area comes and offers money to all the party agents, and they collude and overlook the process. So what the IREV was supposed to do was supposed to help the political parties at the state level, at the national level, to be able to oversight what their party agents have done at the collation, at the registration area collation center and local government area collation center. But that we have missed, and that is why I understand both the political parties that are demanding that INEC should upload this result before they go on are correct, in my opinion. But in as much as INEC is saying that they cannot stop for their failure of uploading the results, they are also correct by saying that we will keep going on. So, I mean, that's how I say it.
It sounds like a lot of confusion, because you promise to deliver something and then you fail to deliver it and say, because there's a fallback mechanism which we are used to, then it doesn't invalidate what I'm doing, even though I've promised to deliver. But I want to read a portion of the press release by INEC on why they were having these glitches. They've allayed fears that it's not sabotage, but they say the problem is totally they're trying to allay fears. Thank you, because people are still wondering why
they're not buying.
Exactly, that's why we have the walkout. Yeah. Exactly. They said the problem is totally due to technical hitches related to scaling up the IREV from a platform for managing off-season state elections to one for managing nationwide general elections. And I read that portion because you talked about how IREV and Beavers was fantastic for our off-season elections, which you monitored. So when you hear INEC say they failed to scale up this system for an election we knew was going to come 4 years after they did the last one, I mean, it's inexcusable, isn't it?
You know, INEC, they have to say something. They just have to give a reason. But in my opinion, I think the reason was weak. Because after the off-cycle elections in Ekiti State and Osun State, and even the FCT election in 2022, we engaged INEC at different fora, as stakeholders, as civil societies, in different meetings. And one concern we had is, yeah, this thing has worked in Ekiti. This thing has worked in Osun State. But those are just polling units, less than 2,000 polling units. We are going into an election with polling units of 176,606 polling units. We hope that INEC will expand their bandwidth as such that it will accommodate the traffic, one, of the results that will be sent in, traffic of people who will be logging on. So, you know, you're supposed to have a login for you to be able to access the INEC, the IREV. You know, so typically for a big election across the country, you would expect, with the assurance of the transparency that IREV will bring to bear, that every politician running for office at the level of Senate, House of Rep, at the presidential level, will have situation rooms. Political parties will have situation rooms. Civil societies have situation rooms all over the places, tracking the results. So that should tell you that there will be a lot of traffic of users on that portal. So one would expect, we've been prepared, the date of this election has been announced 4 years ago. One would expect that this kind of excuses is not what we are supposed to see. But I believe this is very embarrassing for the country, most embarrassing for INEC, especially given, and that's where I'm bothered. The number of Nigerians that I've seen, the first-time voters that I saw in this election, not just people that turned 18. I know people who are in their 40s, 50s, who have never voted because they simply don't believe their votes will count. They all believed their votes were going to count. And not just the way it's going about, but because they can follow it. Citizens have set up situation rooms outside Nigeria to be able to track results in Nigeria, people living in diaspora. I am much more concerned that most of these people may not have interest anymore in going into election. And for us that we've engaged severally across every media, every platform, and we've assured Nigerians that these votes are going to count. We've talked so much about the IREV. Frankly, we feel bad. As we speak right now, I think it's just about 61,000 results that have dropped on the IREV 48 hours after the election. It is very disturbing. I really hope INEC find a way around this thing to get people, not just to say the election is transparent, but it has to be made to be seen that it is transparent. Because INEC assured us on all of this. I am very bothered, and I hope that INEC will come up. And so I'm seeing all the engagements, and people are saying, Tell us, what is your problem? Let us first understand what the problem is. But we see INEC trying to play down on the role of the beavers. But most Nigerians and most political parties in this election are in the, sorry, not beavers, the IREV. Most politicians and most citizens are participating actively because they believe on the assurance of the transparency that IREV was going to bring to this election.
And I mean, we talked about the worrying possibility of questions being raised about motive, because that's really key, isn't it? I mean, we're hearing that some polling officers in Lagos told voters that they were told by their supervisors not to electronically upload the results after voting, but that they should transfer the results manually and physically to the office. I mean, that's not something that we can 100% confirm, because you hear from political parties and so on. They say that's the stuff, and you wonder about their own motives. But in those circumstances, that raises serious questions, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. You know, so the whole essence, like I talked about, for this whole process is for politicians to be able to oversight their party agents at the lower level. Now, so the guideline says that after registration area, ward collation center, and that is where the journey of the beavers ends. Because from the polling unit to the registration area collation office center, when they get to that point, they are supposed to compare the physical results and the result on the beavers. And if they find that there is any discrepancy, the law says that the one on the beavers is supposed to override, to override the physical results. Then anything that happens after the registration area ward collation center, the travel of the beavers stops at that point. The whole result is now manually imputed into the form EC8B. What that now means is that beyond the registration area collation center, every result that gets to the state and that gets to Abuja, the politicians, the political parties and stakeholders at this level can no longer confirm. And it is normal. This is an election. People come to election with suspicion because it has been the in thing in Nigeria. Every political party trying to out-manipulate or out-trick every political party. So once at any time the election management body, gives a body language that shows that the transparency that was expected is no longer there, people will simply start pointing fingers. And it's not just in Nigeria. In 2016, I was in the United States to observe the Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton election. We know the outcomes of that election up to date. This is America that typically would think that are practicing international best practices when it comes to elections and democracy. Talk more of Nigeria. It is very worrisome. I will appeal to the INEC chairman as they resume at 8 o'clock. Clarifications needs to be made. There is a lot of trust issue, even in the political parties and the party agents. And so this now goes to tell how important the party agents are. And most of these party agents that we'll see when we go to the field, most of them, I don't think they actually even understand the essence and the reason why they are there. And they are very important. In the chain of this election, this whole confusion tells you that the most important part is at the polling unit and the registration and ward collation centers. Anything that goes beyond there, they can no longer start looking at the beavers device to start checking the results that were transmitted in the beavers device beyond the one that is supposed to be uploaded. All of that, that's why the chairman is now saying, let's finish this process. What that now means is that beyond this process, you can now go to court and call for all the beavers and start doing the whole process all over again. And that is why the politicians, they understand how going to court and how cumbersome and the stress that goes with it, especially when the ruling party is in power. It becomes difficult to upturn the process. That's why they are demanding that let this thing be done once and for all. That way they can be confident that the results that is here is the same thing that has been transmitted. But we are missing this very important part of our election process, frankly, and I'm very disappointed and worried.
I'm sure you join a long queue of Nigerians who are disappointed. But thank you so much for coming on the program, Mr. Njoku. We really do appreciate the time you spent with us.
Thank you for having me.